Welcome, cadets, to Starfleet Academy, a Star Trek podcast by Phantastic Geek. My name is Matt, and all rise for Admiral Pete. Hello, Pete.
Excuse me, are you allowed to talk like that? Starfleet Academy, a Star Trek podcast by Phantastic Geek for episode 104, Vox in Excelso, comes to you now via Warrior Stew.
And just a bit of fleet news before we launch into the episode. Pete, Star Trek to Star Wars, we seem to do it just about every week. And some Star Wars television program images happening. What's going on?
Though we still don't have confirmation that the second season of Ahsoka will be available this calendar year, we've had some images slip out of the production mat with some hardcore, deep-cut Clone War allusions.
Ooh. Well, I'm going to have to track those images down. That sounds... Although, wait, does that burst the veil of my spoiler-free existence? This is conflicting, Pete. I don't know. I don't know what to do, but...
Sounds like a debate topic.
Well suited here. Resolved, Pete. We'll move on to the next story universe and mention that yesterday we dropped our podcast for the first half. That's the first 4 episodes of Marvel's Wonder Man, the daringly different series on Disney Plus.
Yes, dove into the second half. Can't wait to talk about that a week from yesterday. That'll be Saturday, February 7th.
And Pete, will Batmania strike again as DC Studios continues to explore creating eventually a DCU Batman via the Brave and the Bold?
Yes, because they've got a plan together here. Brave and the Bold coming together. Strangely, some kind of pushback on the screenwriter, Christina Hodson, who wrote Birds of Prey, The Flash, knows the material. I'm not quite sure why people have given her guff. James Gunn has, of course, come to her defense, but that story being readied over there at DC Studios.
Pete, you don't know why some quote-unquote comics purists who may or may not still have basement-dwelling existences are opposed that an English woman of Asian ethnicity is getting her hands on their Batman, despite, as you are saying a bit more seriously, the success of her Bumblebee script, her Birds of Prey script. Okay, the audience didn't show up for Birds of Prey. We did. Last movie we saw before COVID shut down. Well, absolutely. Absolutely. The Flash, okay, there were problems with The Flash. I don't think it was the story. A delightful story. In our podcast for The Flash, I noted I watched it in one sitting without looking at my phone. That how about Pete? That speaks to the story. So yeah, I just wanted to say, not to you, Pete. In all fairness, I think I know why some people are opposed to Christina Hodson writing their Batman movie. Pete, let me put out some positivity to the universe here. I think that Robert Pattinson could play a DCU Batman, and there still be a, the Batman Reeves-verse Batman. Just put him in the blue and the gray for DCU, and
Guns shot that down this week that he would not play both.
James, if I may call you James across the podcast void here, give it a try. Think about it. I think it's a good idea. But Pete, circling.
Have you seen the thing that by the time the Batman Part 2 comes out, Pattinson will be older than Affleck when he was the oldest ever Batman?
I had not seen that per se. I know that it must be frustrating for all involved. On the one hand, that Matt Reeves wants to write the maybe perfect, or I don't want to overuse the word perfect here, but the best possible script for the Batman Part 2. I mean, flip side, Pete, what generally is the problem with many a comic book movie that does not work? It's they filmed before it was ready. So I appreciate James Gunn wanting to do that and Matt Reeves wanting to do that. I also just have this nagging theory that I think I've said on the podcast before that James Gunn, who is not writing Shakespeare, but who is able to crank out, hundreds of pages of scripts in any given year for TV, for this, for animation, for movies, blah, 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 and scripts that work. I suspect he's maybe a little confused why anybody couldn't crank out, their perfect vision of their Batman movie or their, whatever it might be. But Pete, let me drop a brand new chestnut no one's ever said on the podcast. No wine before it's time.
Rounding back to Star Trek, Matt, for season 2 of Starfleet Academy, the one that people say has already been canceled, but they continue to make in our friend to the north, Canada. There will be uniform fixes that will allow particularly prosthetic performers to be more comfortable.
Which, look, I don't love the kind of disco 32nd century asymmetrical thing, but also like what it's funny pajamas for the future, man. Like it's all good, and the notion of making fixes as you go, as you understand your particulars. I think anybody who has a problem with that, look, we don't need to be stuck in this era of look, they made revamped uniforms for the Wrath of Khan and then never made changes again because it was less expensive. Anytime you needed that era, you'd go to that. Sure, let's have these costumes continue to change. It is long. It's now an old trope in Star Trek. The uniforms change anytime you want. They're not really that uniform. So no shame there at all. And now class is in session.
A partial Klingon superimposition gives way to English as the USS Athena hangs in the Val Nebula, where Chancellor Ake addresses the Academy on Stardate 868943, 3 days into their first official flight. Struck by the wonder of the phenomena that could not have evolved into its present without its past, just like her cadets, she ruminates as they head to class today that they continue to grow into what they will ultimately become.
The doctor presenting to the cadets notes a familiar refrain with the first link: the chain is forged when speech is forbidden and thought prevented, as said by Judge Aaron Sati. Uh, Pete, I've seen online some debate that either like, I can't believe they got it wrong. I think some debate was they got it wrong because Picard said it. No, Picard was quoting Admiral
Right.
Sati, or maybe it was like the wording was slightly changed. Like again, that's the stuff. I just want to point out that there was debate. And by the way, in the episode "The Drumhead," Picard's quoting this guy, and most of the words, if not all the words, are word for word here. So let's stand down, red alert. And in Judge Sati's honor, a debate competition will be held. So don't be chicken feed. Can he talk like that? Cadet Holloway asks. And Cadet Holloway gets dressed down for his question. Meanwhile, on the other side, because Pete, maybe the Cadet Holloway line is just an excuse to get the doctor to look camera right while camera left. Crag is looking nervous. Klingons do not do debate games. And Darum Raimi is having a side conversation about how he is, in fact, ready for this. And delightful use of character, affect, and technology as the doctor Hollow projects right next to him and talks about the importance of debate in arguing for his own existence, the recent Beta Z episode, and so forth. So, Pete, let's debate.
Should be noted too that Caleb is prominently wearing the bracelet this week. Noticed first in the scene, though we don't see the young lady who gave it to him over there at the War College, but a clear carryover. Um, so, yeah, we do the debate team trope this week, and we're going to put the cadets through the paces here. Okay, line up down the middle. We will go through and see who's got the stuff as the different topics come across the screen there. And kind of shockingly, Mir is able to one by one dismantle his opponents until ultimately uh, Crag, who's super uh, down on debates as a Klingon, but it's because of his fear of public speaking, takes the debate podium.
I've spoken in the past about how I'm still understanding the flavor of this show and so forth, and to have like Caleb is hero. Initially, I was like, okay, I don't know. It's yet another Caleb is the first among equals focus to the story and so forth. To the credit of the story, we then cut to Caleb and Crag, whose bond we've already documented in multiple episodes. They're having their lunch delivered by a dot. And has Caleb really memorized all these things, or was it, as others might say, some Kentucky windage? No, for Caleb, arguing and debate and knowing the particulars, it's another way to fight and survive as he did in prison. And to be fair, Pete, that's when I said, okay, story, you kind of had me question why are we shining a light on him? And the story said, because he's actually really good at this. Let's not forget that he's the ragamuffin who actually does have potential to go very far here. It's not just some conceit of the story, or he is the de facto space mom's space foster son, although that's kind of built into it too. It's on his character merits, and I really appreciate this scene for pointing it out.
With each passing episode, it becomes very clear why Sandro Rosta was cast as essentially the lead of this show with no professional experience. That they discovered him for this, and he carries just about every scene he's in. Except, Matt, we're going to have a debate right now. It's not his fault that he's put in the position to suggest that a square piece of pepperoni pizza in a tin would somehow serve as an edible lunch.
Pete, I would like to agree. To be fair, okay, I think there's a couple of points of context here. First of all, he is a former prison rat, ragamuffin, etc. So he might not actually know the highest highs of New York style pizza as made in New Jersey. That's number one. He's doing the best that he can. Number two, maybe it is the future where yes, it appears to be a metal tin. Which, my goodness, Pete, can you imagine how that is locking in moisture at the bottom and making it soggy and so forth? Maybe it is the far future of transparent aluminum and all this great technology. So maybe there are microscopic perforations there allowing for the steam to escape. I share your concerns. Pete, I feel like if Star Trek can have us look up to the stars and say, can there be a better future? Maybe that better future is about pizza too.
Well, of course, Jaden picks off the pepperoni because he won't eat anything that did not die in a fair fight, thus essentially setting up the conflict for the episode. Um, but with everything that they've gone through here together, Mir offering up warrior stew from the replicators here. Again, rules exist, however. Only somebody who has served their house in battle can taste that. And Jaden has not done that for the House of Crag.
Didn't we just podcast a bunch of Wonder Man episodes yesterday? One of those episodes ended with "Let's get pizza." Yes, pepperoni pizza.
Yes,
It was just the strangest thing to find pepperoni pizza. Yes, pepperoni pizza. No, being
we
the
are
thing.
living in a simulation.
Well, we absolutely are. Computer Arch. Oh boy, computer, get rid of Arch. There we go. Now I'm back to my fantasies here. Um, as there is this rumination over intestine warrior stew, and indeed Crag not able to have it for for reasons I wish they would explain. Oh, wait, it's the shape of the episode here. Ake calls Crag and in the next scene shares bad news. A Klingon ship with refugees from 8 houses has taken damage, has been destroyed, and they believe that his family was on board. Crag flashes to the past, but for now, information sharing is, in this present time, information sharing is not done between the Klingons and the Federation. So the exact nature of this disaster is difficult to come by. Ake promises to get him answers when they can, and he declines the offer of some time off. He has said goodbye to his family a long time ago. Pete, I wish that we could get more information. Wait, we have the credits that we flash back to Krios Prime 16 months ago.
Yes, informing what led Jaden to the Federation here, to Starfleet, um, hanging out with his supportive older brother, Thar, uh, who, uh, despite the fact, Matt, they look to be in the woods just outside the famous quarry that they use in the Toronto adjacent area sometime in the palatable fall there, on an adventure, bringing things back to their family. We have a unusual situation, but considering, Matt, what's gone on with the Klingons that we will learn about the diaspora, it makes sense that there would be two males, one female in the lead of the family with the two children.
Well, Pete, I'd like to dig a little bit more into the notion of a triad family in Klingon culture, but I, I do have to take exception
Do
with
you
something.
really think like characters that we've seen, I don't know, do you really think the Duras sisters would settle for just one partner with what we know about Klingon mating rituals?
Uh, no way, no how. Um,
Okay.
but
So, can we stand down from the latest red alert clickbait headlines this week that the uh, the producers have destroyed yet another heritage race? Um, hey Matt, remember when Gene Roddenberry was still alive as they made Star Trek Six, and the Klingons blew up a moon, their own moon, from overmining?
I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, gee. So do you think that a stubborn race, as characterized for all these decades, would suddenly back off of that? Or that it's not more of the same? Hey, give me my Star Trek, but make it the same. That the stubborn Klingons would blow up their home planet and have to try to continue their ways in different locations.
I mean, look, Klingons want to go poly, you go for it. You go boy and girl, or if there are Klingon combinations, whatever combinations you want to do. It's all good. Fake Klingon people. I just want to say, Pete, off your notion that they are in the quarry area, filming in the quarry area around Toronto. Pete, it must be completely different because Krios Prime is has an orange hue to it, and towards the end of the episode, when they are in a similar landscape, it has a blue hue to it. Now, I just happen to have a color wheel open here, and I do see that orange and blue are basically at opposite ends. So it's not like
There you
somebody
go.
put a filter on top of it to say same spot, but it's going to look like two different places because one's orangey and one's bluey. Um, but I digress. I know this, Pete. I I think that to go back to this family nature of things for a second, I do think that it's interesting the kind of in the edit, like for example, dad number two, I don't think has much has many lines. Like, yes, it is clear in the story, two dads, one mom, all of that, beautiful. You do you, everybody. But I also think it's interesting that it's Drakehall is Jaden Craig's father, and that he's the dad that gets most of the story focus here. So whether that's the episode walking the tightrope or protecting your corporate flank or just, hey, regardless of the family makeup here, we want it to be clear who Jaden's ultimate conflict is with regarding the primary hunter of his lineage being Dad Drake Hall and so forth. Um, but we do have in the story here that Jaden must leave bird watching, right, which we've already heard about, because they have to go hunting. In a bit, we will see that they are bird hunting, which I appreciate is not a point that is, we're not hit over the head with that. They let we, the audience, kind of see it as a layer of subtlety here. Where I think there could be an argument to be like, we really need to hammer home he's a bird watcher, not a bird killer, when instead he's a man of healing and science and medicine, not a man of hunting and killing. Even though they live in a culture and we live in a world where both exist.
But it's an excuse to be off on their own where Tar can give him the Starfleet transmitter that he's traded for at the local post. He knows that Starfleet is a place where his healer brother, that he acknowledges the usefulness of the art that he practices, uh, could gain more knowledge and help him grow even more because his mind is hungry and he recognizes that.
We, yes, we have this issue of the Starfleet transmitter here, including the call from it, Starfleet, a place for explorers and healers. Um, I, Again, I'm not trying to nitpick here. Every time I make an issue over the performance that Stephen Colbert has been asked to give, and I feel it's a little over the top generally. It's not a Stephen Colbert slam. I do like that in this hollow message here, it's, I feel like, the appropriate level of enthusiasm, and maybe they haven't said, Stephen, let's do it one more time with more energy. Um, but similarly, it's also good to have this is a good use of the digital teen, um, as we inch towards this backstory of how Jaden got to the academy.
And then cut to the present where we've got the supportive cadets, particularly the ladies, right? Genesis, Sam, um, sympathetic toward Jaden. Hey, what can we do? How can we support you in terms of what's gone on with your family? Before they settle in for class here with the Sati debate coming up. What will we argue about? And as topics are thrown out here, um, one student says, why aren't we taking what everybody's talking about in the news with the Klingons? Why don't we do that? Um, Caleb, of course, rises to Jaden's defense, but that Klingon stubbornness, right? Don't you dare defend me. Fight my own battles. Um, and surprisingly, that Crag would, or not surprisingly, right? That he would want them to debate it. It's the doctor who's careful not to do it, and he doesn't want to bring the sad reality into their aspirational classroom. But ultimately, the idea of if we ignore that, we're ignoring the point.
And ultimately, in what is a very well crafted story here, the doctor trying to avoid them debating over this, but ultimately it is the only viable choice. He gives the opportunity for any dissent from the class, and there is none. So, indeed, resolved, they must review the facts of Klingon diaspora, prepare sides, get the facts, don't compound things with ignorance. Uh, it was about at this point that I was saying, this is starting to feel rather like a, a next generation episode. And I would like to propose, Pete, as we, maybe I won't bring it up every scene here, But I'd like to propose that this is a very next generation type episode with an A story and a B story, some interaction here between the A story and the B story, um, exploring a contemporary topic through the Star Trek lens. We are not ignorant to what they are, to some of the general modern topics that they are exploring here, but nor is it, kind of overwhelmingly in our face, or is it, turning into a current events program. And this is an extremely able episode.
I would argue by design, Matt, that influence from the next generation. But in Chancellor Ake's office, we have Admiral Charles Vance via hologram from elsewhere talking about a potential uninhabited planet, Fawn Alpha, within Federation space that they could offer up to the Klingons identical geothermal energy of Quonos. But the problem, that's not going to wash with the Klingons. They're not going to take charity. But their oldest warlord, Obel Wachak, who goes way back with the part Lanthanite Ake, he might be somebody they could potentially back channel to suggest this idea. They've just got to secret him to Ake so that they can have this discussion. Otherwise, it will not happen.
And that's about at the point that I was saying, wait, we have yet to kind of in the main timeline here reach the nebula. Oh, wait, maybe multiple things are going on here. I do like this notion of Ake's background, given that she has this long life, she has this long history. Vance notes that it is longer than War and Peace. Uh, Superfluous lines, but wonderful shading to both characters here. And we move on to Genesis and Caleb questioning the idea of this debate. Ultimately, they're both for the idea of the Federation giving asylum to the Klingons. Hey, Jaden, will you join our debate team as well? Will you join our side? He notes he does not need help, and he is on the opposite side. He feels that the Klingons should solve their own problems. There is no protection from this loss or from the great losses in life. So, let each challenge define oneself. Then we, in the story, return to the nebula spot where Jaden again is flashing back to brother Thar being gravely wounded by a poisoned knife. Indeed, it was done at the trading post. The implication, or if not the outright statement, that Thar was there trading for more Federation technology, off-world, non-Klingon stuff. There is a dermal regenerator at the trading post, but the Klingons will not use it. No Federation tech, no Federation medicine. Pete, is there any Klingon dewormer here that could save the day?
There's not, because that stuff doesn't work. And that Thor dies, but not before telling Jaden to trust himself, that he is in the right, that he will ultimately find himself placing his hands on his brother's necklace there, which we will see later in the episode. And then coming out of that flashback, we get the appearance of Obel in Ake's office here, where he smells vintage blood wine, and the music here immediately tells you this is more than a diplomatic meeting.
Yes, shall they catch up or get straight to business? He says straight to business, and for a couple of lines, she shows him Fawn Alpha. It's similar to Kronos. Charity won't be accepted, though. I like that the actor does an especially zealous swipe away of the Fawn
Mm-hmm.
Alpha hologram. It, on first view, it was like, okay, is it maybe a bit too much? Like, does somebody need to say, like, but I think there's character energy behind it. Pete, maybe the energy of anger, maybe the energy of passion, because there's certainly magnetism between the two of them, and we will get more as the scene continues. But it is interrupted here as we go to the debate classroom, empty except for Jaden practicing his opening argument. Caleb arrives, suggesting that memorizing the particulars is the way to go. Do it without notes, know it. They're, of course, on separate sides of the issue, but Caleb wonders, aren't they kind of orphan brother types? This only makes Jaden angry. He says that this is not about Caleb. The conflict builds between the two of them. This is a wonderfully illuminating scene for the motivations of both characters. Jaden saying that Caleb has no people and thus regurgitates facts without meaning, which I don't want to agree with, but the logic, nay, the debate style logic, is true from a certain perspective about this character of Caleb, who I'm grudgingly coming around to appreciating as the de facto star of the show. Again, it's a great scene showing character stuff, character relationships, but it's also deeply tied into the momentum of the episode, the message of the episode, and the mission, if you will the mission here of the debate.
It's the perfect dichotomy in that you have two characters who are yearning for greater connection, right? Mir is without his mother. They're still looking for her. Um, and Crag lost his brother. His family is unaccounted for. And Mir wants so badly to be the surrogate brother, but Jaden is hesitant to forge that connection, to take it out of charity, which is the perfect point to cut away to Ake and Wojciech tossing their blood wine goblets into the fire.
Yeah, and as they're getting into a bit of trouble here, remember that time that the cops came? Ha 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 ha. But Obel woke up and Ake was gone, and that's when I said, wait a minute. I've seen the movie Big with Tom Hanks. I think these two had a bunk bed sleepover once upon a time. Um, Indeed, there's kind of further flirting here. Um, but the pullback from both of them, maybe Obel, the first two pull back, he will look into Jaden's family, the status of Jaden's family, and so forth. And the fight is where he lives, Obel says. We go back to Jaden looking at pieces of the Starfleet transmitter, which we did not see how it became broken. Then we flash back because Pete, we're going to explain that. His father is taking him hunting. Starfleet Academy skills could have saved his brother, but pah. And the transmitter is a trinket worth smashing. Oh, Dad's going to smash it, says I. Look, there's a bird, a real bird of prey, not a Klingon bird of prey. Let's strike it with the bow and arrow. Jaden does not. He's going to honor his brother by not hunting. And with that, the transmitter is discarded. Yes, Dad wanted to smash it, but instead it kind of bounces away, which, again, the scene would have worked just fine if Dad took it and smashed it, but there's a little extra gravity here to this little scene where we're saying, how's it going to end up being smashed and so forth. And indeed, after it tumbles over some rocks, Jaden does indeed find it smashed.
And that he's trying to piece together this object as we are piecing together the chronology of what led him to Starfleet, right? Um, and then Matt, it's not a big Darum episode after last week, but making his presence known in Crag's um, dorm room, coming to see him. And first, he wants Crag to hit him, which he won't, because that would be like squashing an insect. But instead, Darum gets in his face. A lot of people speculating with the stills out there that this was going to be more than it actually was. But he teaches him Kionian battle breathing.
Which is a great moment. Uh, we are meant to not like Darum upon his initial introduction, and then kind of grudgingly go, we even have it, I think, later in this episode. He's always, Caleb calls him always cranky, always a pain in the butt, whatever the exact line is in a bit. Um, but we see Darum kind of using here his confidence, his uh, cultural knowledge, and so forth to share this battle breathing, focus the anger, chant, breathe, kind of put your fists together in a mantra like fashion, a visual mantra. Um, Darum holding those fists close. I will say, Pete, I think it is fair to see a subtext from Darren's point of view. I think it is an interesting um, turning point for the character to ponder him having feelings for Darum, romantic attraction, so forth, or rather, Darum having them for Jaden. Jaden does step
Heated
back.
Star Trek rivalry, perhaps?
There you go. Um, it's a wonderfully. I think on the one hand, there's a subtext that is not very very sub to get to, but there's a restraint to this scene. Jaden steps back, and I don't think he's feeling Darum's direction in that moment. Just differing intents. Um, I think it's a wonderfully well handled scene here, and uh, again, it's illuminating. I think for part of who Darum is. It's illuminating for who Jaden is not, and all of that. And still, we have service to the overall story. Here's a way to focus. We're going to see it later. It's just it's a wonderfully well done scene.
So it's time for the debate. Um, First cringe moment I had here, Matt, with the digital dean. It's one thing for the doctor to call the cadets zygotes, but now that we have the PA announcer doing that, I think that's a bridge too far.
Yeah, the production is asking for more Stephen Colbert than Digital Dean. I hope they start to kind of just sort that out because it's cool enough to have Stephen Colbert's wonderful tone and kind of the authoritative optimism. Like you could just have that. He doesn't need to be a character. Um, but they're using him as a character. So to me, it's the fault of the production here that's doing that because I'm sure if they said less energy, more of this, less, I'm sure from that you choose your take and so forth. I doubt Stephen Colbert is saying, you know, a la Wonder Man style. If I don't know the Digital Dean's backstory for the last 500 computational cycles, then I ain't doing it. Throw script, walk out. Um, but we have here, Pete, the debate starting, a minor debate montage proceeds until we ultimately get to Caleb and Jaden. I would say, Pete, about the montage, I think it is to the credit of this episode that they say we've done we've done some episodes where maybe out of necessity, introduction to the audience and so forth, we're going to focus on Caleb. He's brand new to Starfleet ways, so he's your in for the audience. So that's why he's getting a starring role here, et cetera, et cetera. We had more of a group feel last week. I like that they have the confidence here to kind of say some characters are really just supporting characters this week, and that's okay because we have a large cast. We have what I'm assuming, Pete, is a fairly inexpensive youth cast, so nobody needs to be upset that they're getting, that Sam has the least lines out of people this week. Like that's how that goes, and you get bigger slices in the future, presumably. But when we get to the Caleb and Jaden debate here, Caleb's argument is confident, fact based, nuanced. Jaden starts to be overwhelmed by panic. Darum gives that fist motion there, reminding Jaden of his breathing. Jaden starts in a halting manner, quoting particulars. Caleb running laps around him. Jaden picking up speed and passion. Both debate participants here are reminded by the doctor to not make things personal. For Jaden, he's speaking of this idea of personal definition and personal determination. Then the debate dialogue goes from shining to burning over, and ultimately the doctor throws both of them out for they've gone too far in this debate stage.
This all the while, Ake is watching, not in an optimal condition. after what took place before with Obel Wojcik. Um, so leading us to the low point of the episode, right? Like, what will happen now? Um, so you have Crag again contemplating that nebula where Cadet Master Thok comes to see him, and it's this mentorship. We're at an academy after all, right? Being able to take Crag aside with their shared Klingon lineage and talking about her backgrounds, that she had never been able to mentor a Klingon, and that she wants to help him now, and that they can somehow find a way forward with this. He explaining the final interaction he had with his father, that he caused him to miss the bird of prey, but it's Thok that's able to process this for him, that his father gave him the out, right? That he missed on purpose, that the yelling afterward was almost like the way in which Klingons mourn for their lost, and he gave him up there. He allowed him to go and pursue his path for Starfleet.
Again, a scene giving us character background, new character interactions, all in service of the episodic story. And it leads to Jaden speaking to the group, saying that the Federation stops being the Federation if they insist that Klingons stop being Klingon, which on the one hand is a mouthful, but like immediately you can go, oh, I understand that statement. I might not completely emotionally agree with it, but I get it. Now is the time to meet Klingons as they are in the present. He reflects on the myth of Kalis and how his brother understood the full expanse of it. Jaden could not until now. Battle exists in many forms. The Federation must hear the Klingon perspective as it is spoken, and there must be a Klingon solution to a Klingon problem. Um, we then go to the exterior, into space. That is the central module of the Athena.
Saucer section.
The saucer section goes to warp, which I guess, Pete, I didn't fully know that it could go to warp without the winged accoutrements, but it's the 32nd century, man. Um, and Jaden goes to the bridge, and I like that we don't overdo it, but we do get the kind of first time on the bridge wondrous moment that we've seen certainly a number of times in Star Trek in the recent times.
And what we need here is the Klingon solution to the Klingon problem, right? So Vance is there and they address General Wojcik that Klingons have taken refuge in Federation space here, and that they will protect the security of their planet, Fawn Alpha, from these Klingon interlopers. Oh, okay. There's the knowing grin across Obel's face. Well, then we're going to treat you as enemies. And we have the, cavalry from both sides warp in, including the USS Riker, Matt. Uh, I guess they couldn't save it for the Frakes episode. They got it in there before. Um, but it's a sham fight, right? Let's aim away from those ships. It's all for appearances, ultimately, so that Ake can tell the Federation to stand down and to have the assembled Klingon fleet here seize control of Fawn Alpha as the spoils of war, new homeland acquired.
The notion, Pete, that there are people online complaining that the Federation fleet is only 6 ships And look, here's a still from lower decks where the whole California class shows up, and there are 30 ships, and there's only six here. Yes, they say that this is not some sort of nuanced thing like, does Darum have same sex feelings towards Jay? This is objectively stated as a sham fight meant to. Pete, I don't even think the Klingons are are unaware that it is a sham fight. This is a cultural bending of the knee, etc., etc., so that cultural concerns that are not necessarily ours as humans or the viewers and whatnot. We might not share that perspective, but you go, okay, great. Now everybody can kind of feel good about the situation. There is no claim here that the entire fleet of the Federation, the fleet of Starfleet, is six ships. It's a it is a pretend fleet within the narrative here. So can we relax? Like, again, maybe I'm spending too much time on the negative here, but holy crow, they're clear with what they're doing here. I will say, Pete, it is not intended to be the most razzle dazzle space battle of all time. It's quite good considering I think the production could have been like, let's just do some fake pew 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 because it's not a real battle. It's not real, but it is to a point, you know. Um, it's a good little battle here, and as you say, Pete, with Fawn Alpha now seized via the spoils of war, complete surrender given over, and hey, no casualties on our side, no casualties on your side. We have our Star Trek solution.
The eye wink from Ake to Crag here, who has done right by his race, who's done right by his family. And what do you know? They have been found. They were in the convoy here, who has now taken up refuge on Fawn Alpha. We have Obel come aboard, who's there to present him not just with a bow that he has earned, uh, but also that news about his parents. So everything's worked out here. So the blue filter through which we see his family, it's understood that is the now, not the then, and he finally gets to taste that spicy warrior stew in the stairwell set with Mir.
And I appreciate that the story, the writing room does not go for the low hanging fruit of now Jaden and Caleb will have friction for the next couple episodes. It's not reasonable to assume that they were fighting over an issue worth fighting over, but the bond is there. That's your big takeaway. The bond between these two orphan brothers, uh, of sorts, the bond is what endures. Caleb hands over the fixed transmitter. Okay, fixed with help from Darum, who wasn't a jerk for a day, which is also a nice bit of characterization for Darum not appearing in this scene. They do apologize to each other, and Caleb says that he hoards Earth food, uh, mentioned, in that lunch scene, because his mother said that they would share it together one day. You see, Pete, I feel sympathy here for the pizza issue because I care about these characters, unlike you that are coldly judging them on Caleb's lack of pizza acumen. But Pete, the trick is to not let go of the past, but to let the present in. And Pete, the best use of Stephen Colbert so far as the transmitter plays at Starfleet Academy. If you're looking for us, we're looking for you to end the episode.
Red alert. All hands stand to battle stations.
Pete, we have a tactical analysis of this week's threats. Let's start with the worst one out there, public speaking.
The number one fear in society, speaking in public. Number two, Matt,
The Klingon stubbornness?
death.
Wow.
So that means if you are presenting a eulogy at someone's funeral, you are worse off.
Worse off than the person
Decedent,
in the
of
person of
course.
honor.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's part of what makes the episode so relatable. Um, you want to say, okay, his panic is maybe a little overblown. I mean, not if that's. I have to admit, Pete, I did not know that that was the number one fear of the public and so forth. Um, so again, there's a great architecture to these episodes and to this episode in particular. Um, and indeed, we have as I was going to say a convenient threat, a believable threat, Pete, that there is this stubbornness amongst Klingons.
That Praxis blew up during the film era, and now that it doesn't matter how it happened, that ultimately Kronos suffered the same fate, and that our Klingons, who everybody's been asking about, right, in this, um, new timeline, where are they? What are they up to? Um, that it makes sense that they'd be searching for a homeland, that they've been trying to hold on to not just their traditions, but to their identity. Um, that there's fewer of them, that they've dwindled down to just these 8 houses. But when Discovery came out 9 years ago now, and back in the earlier time frame, the idea of remaining Klingon, of not allowing themselves to be chained uh, to anybody else's traditions, but only to hold on to their own. That follow through here, that we're not going to accept the charity, that we need to find our own way, but that there can be some form of compromise, and that a Klingon at Starfleet Academy, which is not new. We've done this with Worf, right? Like he's not a pioneer. Crag is, and I think the story is best suited that way, right? Because then it really becomes stereotypical. Um, but that he helps to chart the path, and ultimately he gets what he needs from a personal standpoint on top of the societal.
And I also appreciate that in this 900 years after Discovery Classic Trek era, what do you do with the Klingons? Okay, it's a bit of a reset, but it solves a story problem that, frankly, Star Trek has been dealing with since Star Trek 6. How do you evolve the Klingon people, but then also not evolve them because you need a bad guy? We have the reset of sorts, or we have the sympathy. They are the failing Soviet Union in Star Trek 6. Then fast forward to the next generation. Okay, they're kind of friendly, but then we're gonna do Klingon episodes because we could do like biker gangs, yeah. And then what's Deep Space Nine do at a certain point? Oh, there's Klingon tension again. So now the Klingons are not great. There's this back and forth. So to kind of say they're doing their own thing, we can help them out a little bit. There's still kind of an easy piece, but there's also not. Um, it's like a stealthy reset, and one that I very much appreciate. Let's use our long range sensors to scan for some theories. Pete, as I said earlier in the episode, we perhaps are entering a phase of this first season of the Academy series where we focus more on one character, and some of our main characters truly are supporting or almost featured background. Again, I'm thinking Sam gets a couple of scenes, but nothing particularly meaty or interesting or heroic. Do you
Got a
think,
big week next week.
well, having not seen trailers or anything, do you think this is a pattern that will continue where we continue to get character centric episodes that illuminate backstory and future and intention and relationships now and all of that?
It's no surprise that they made the first 6 episodes available, and each highlights the different cadets, which is the way to go, right? And really, when you consider that the time honored idea of every series is that you essentially have 7 episodes before the mold takes shape, and that is what it is.
Um, yeah, I would certainly agree. And I saw something or other online in this last week that was arguing that the first season of Strange New Worlds has been the most successful because essentially it did something similar to this, really the whole episodic versus serial and focusing on characters. Um, Probably if a show goes as long as Strange New Worlds has and will go, you can't necessarily do illuminating backstory and future direction type episodes. It really is something that's reserved to a beginning of a series, first season, first 20 episode, whatever it is. But it's a tool to use now. And I have gone from seeing Jaden as an interesting, amusing character to really understanding all his particulars because of this episode. So I welcome it, and I also welcome the fact that we don't really have a razzle dazzle space mission. It's go out, talk to a guy, get told no, go out and talk to a guy again, have a fake fist fight, give him what you wanted to give him at the beginning of the episode, the end. Um, that's a novel use of a trek into the stars, and not one that you often see in Star Trek.
Well, to lean into that next generation drumhead episode, right? With Nora Sati, and to bring in the idea of her father and returning the debate to Starfleet Academy, which has itself returned from the brink as the Klingons are on the brink, and have them be the debate topic, right? They've Russian dolled this plot of this episode on us, and it's smartly done. um, the Nala Obel romance angle was not one that I saw coming, but she does not stop surprising us through all these episodes, cut so differently than so many captains we've had in the past.
Yeah, and it too is a great little illumination for her. She's not. I was gonna say she's not a supporting character in this episode. Maybe she is the first supporting character, whereas others are, it's co-starring Darum, co-starring Caleb, and so forth. But it's great for her to get her moment too, and to sit and go, "Oh, I Klingons are long lived. She's even longer lived. They were enjoying a day or an evening together." Um, yeah, it's definitely a fun turn for her.
I really hope the mentorship that Thok supplies to Crag in this episode. We had the first meeting in the first episode where he's coming to check in, and she has him put his bag on top of Mir as he's doing push-ups. um, that we continue to see that build, and that she can kind of be the surrogate parent for Crag, who can't go back to his family because of the traditions and that Klingon stubbornness.
I like it when shows tell you why they didn't do a thing sooner. And as soon as she walks in, I go, "Oh my goodness, yes, of course the half Klingon character is going to talk to the Klingon character about Klingon cultural things." And then for her out of the gate to say, in retrospect, I should have approached you as a mentor, a Klingon mentor earlier. Like that's all we need sometimes. That's my recent theme on our podcast, Pete, that when things are working, or more broadly, when you're having fun in a story, you kind of can excuse away some things. And sure, now is the time for her to approach this, not at the beginning of beginning of the series. Um, she does reference in passing some of the wisdom that she's gotten from Reno, and that's when I was like, oh, right, Reno's not in this episode. Do you think, Pete, just as with the Academy kids, some of our recurring adult characters, what do you think here of sometimes using them, sometimes not? Indeed, let me ask specifically, do you think that all of the bridge characters doing their bridge stuff this week were they even filmed for this episode, or were they filmed earlier? Because I don't think they shared the screen with Ake. So we're really kind of stretching around our guest cast a bit.
I mean, it's an ensemble group, right? Okay. The Tamira comes and goes amongst the kids. That's been explained through the story. That Mir is in every episode. That Holly Hunter, all right, the most accomplished actress they've ever cast in the center seat. Of course, you're going to have that. You're going to have her presence. Um, but it's been Gina Yashere who's just absolutely stolen this show and really the breakout amongst the instructors.
I'm reminded of Robert Beltran, the Chakotay actor, at a convention we went to a long time ago, basically recounting his frustration that when the show started, he was the number two lead, and by the time the story figured out what they wanted to do with Seven of Nine partway through, all of a sudden it was the Captain, Seven, and the Doctor as your lead trio, and Chakotay somewhere. So yeah, sometimes whether it's Thok, whether it's whoever, whether who knows, Pete, maybe the character gets added in the second season. We go, oh my goodness, it's the new fan favorite. It's the new, the new Seven of Nine in terms of a great mid series injection. Who knows where things will settle? That's part of the joy that we get of the 20 guaranteed episodes of Starfleet Academy, and perhaps more. Time will tell. With that, Pete, let's open hailing frequencies.
Hailing frequencies open, sir.
And to Twitter or X we go, where we have a poll, Pete, ranking this episode by rank. Did folks give it 1 pip ensign? That got 11.1%. 2 pips for lieutenant? That got 0%. 3 for commander? 33.3%, so very 3 oriented. And 4 pips captain? 55.6%. Some replies here. First up, James the Sagacious, Big Killen on Twitter. Really loved this one. Trek really shines in debate courtroom heavy episodes. The ending seemed a bit telegraphed, but there are teaching moments, right? The Klingons have a passion for ceremony/symbolism and understanding that can make them powerful allies. Jaden not questioning Lurid's wisdom as an elder despite being biracial was a great touch. Love the nuance, love the insight there from James.
Absolutely. And, anybody that doesn't see the DNA of Star Trek on this episode is willfully attempting to not see it.
Next up is at KCLYLE1 on Twitter. It's Twitter Not Life. When I said last week I wanted to see character spotlight episodes, I didn't expect them to start with Jaden. I honestly find him the least compelling character and feel like they didn't build him up enough previously to make me want to see his story first. That's not to say it wasn't an interesting story. The Klingons being almost an endangered species at this point in time is interesting. I think the final resolution makes sense in that it gets to the goal and lets the Klingons save face. But I feel like they could have given us a little more about him ahead of time. Maybe it's just his his general quiet nature that makes him less interesting to me, but I do appreciate now having the backstory, and I hope we continue to see these spotlights regularly. As always, the Doctor is amazing, and the debate scenes were interesting. I also love seeing the cadets getting closer. Any bets on who gets their story told next? Pete, it seems like you have a bet.
Yes. it's named for Sam next week for the episode.
That may be a hint. I don't know. Last tweet, Pete, comes
and it
from...
is their standout episode.
Okay. Well, there you go. Next tweet comes from Terry Womack. That's at Terry Womack, which is handy. This week's episode was odd. They chose Jaden as the first deep dive. In the previous episode, he's against violence in any form. Then he's for it. He thinks of a violent plan to assist the violent race in capturing the planet. However, the Klingon emotional spectrum is on full display. The passion is rekindled in a Klingon who felt abandoned by his family. To me, this episode is a homage to Worf and his story as a Klingon. Overall, 4 out of 5, which I'd say, Pete, is still a pretty good rating there from Terry.
Absolutely. Come on. I mean, you're establishing these characters. You're moving the story forward. We got to check in. Hey, mom's still out there, right? Like, That's going to be resolved at some point, how that comes back. I did not think that we'd have Giamatti in the first episode and get essentially this far without some more of him. Um, but his presence looms large still.
I would say too, it's interesting looking at Terry's words there. And I guess to a certain degree, uh, the words from "It's Twitter Not Life." I don't know that we drastically covered like kind of breaking news stuff for Jaden. Like, yeah, it's interesting the kind of quasi abandoned by his family, but it's reaffirming his healer instincts that are not in line with Klingon tastes and all that. Um, I think what I appreciate more is that the foundation of his story gives us all these great other character moments, whether they're interacting with him directly or in a secondary way. Um, Either way, Pete, I ask you this: what feedback do you have on your end?
On the Phantastic Geek subreddit, Matt r slash Phantastic Geek, Red Dog 65 writes in, somehow my podcast queue was so full that I had to sort through and find Phantastic Geek to catch up on Academy. The choice of intro music for the podcast caused a flashback to playing for the midterm commencement in high school. Just a few quick points after listening to both episodes. The bracelet you keep pondering about. It was the data storage device that Tarima used to display the Betazoid star charts for what existed behind their psionic barrier. Sending it to Caleb via her brother was to facilitate his search for his mother. Does it do something else? Maybe, but so far that was the significance of it. Laplings. We have seen laplings twice before. There was a model of one in Alexander's classroom in the Enterprise D, and there was a live one among the collection in The Most Toys. Data attempts to mimic the sounds it makes to pass the time while he is captive. Which admiral does Genesis call Dad? There has been no mention of her mother so far, so if Genesis were a human Dar Shah hybrid, should we call them mixed race? Uh, I would have, I think it would have been mentioned already. Therefore, I am eliminating Vance as her father. Rather, I believe her dad served as a junior officer or perhaps first officer under Ake. Why? When we see her laying out the details of the prank, she says she boosted the growth accelerant because Nala's plants are a bit too tame for our purposes. She doesn't say Ake's
Ooh.
plants or the Chancellor's plants. She uses the captain's first name. That suggests a familiarity with the person that a cadet wouldn't have after a week or so. My hypothesis is Genesis grew up hearing stories from her father's days of serving with Ake, and that a first officer would have first name privileges with the captain. It also makes sense that her dad could rise from commander to admiral in the 15 years that Ake was retired from Starfleet. Finally, since Paramount has been rather bad at marketing slash merch, I doubt there will be official Warp Core pajamas. We didn't get we didn't get Uhura's PJs, Spock's toque, uh, Pike's apron, or those awesome memory foam bed pillows from his quarters. So why would they suddenly hit on the one item that almost everyone wants from Academy? Oh, but wait. You can buy a $900 Strange New Worlds phaser that doesn't actually stun anyone, except perhaps a spouse looking at your bank account transactions. And Red Dog 65 closes with the live long and prosper emoji.
I mean, so many thoughts. First of all, Red Dog 65. This is not a show that has kind of the central mystery to it. Let's determine, who is dead and who's a ghost and that sort of stuff. I had goosebumps with that well nuanced. I mean, this is nuance for the debate episode, right? The going by the facts here to back up the notion that Genesis has familiarity with Ake in a way that others do not. Love all of that. Frankly, love the logic there, which I love that I can't disagree with presently that Genesis is fully of her species and not part human. Is there potentially some wiggle room where that could be undone story wise? Yes, although I would agree through 4 episodes there is not evidence to contradict the notion that she is fully of her alien species. Love all of that. Um, Again, I will just say, as I was listening to you read that, Pete, I went on to shop.startrek.com, who is not a sponsor. There really is legitimately cool stuff as part of their Academy collection. I some of it kind of outside the box. For example, there's a black ball cap that's got the SA logo, and then says Command Division. Like, I think you could wear it out and people wouldn't necessarily know.
Yeah.
They wouldn't look at it and go, "Nice Star Trek hat, nerd."
Right.
So they're I think they're trying. I think they're trying. But Pete also mentioned they're selling a $450 original series tricorder prop replica, so which is already sold out. So there's stuff for all price points, I guess.
Hips247 writes in 4th episode. I like the more serious tone. The debating episodes are always interesting, from The Measure of a Man in The Next Generation to Dax in Deep Space Nine. But this was a lot weaker, and the episode really telegraphed and obvious for me. But looks as though we are getting more character backgrounds rather than it being fully focused on Caleb, which is better for fleshing out the crew.
Um, it was a different style episode. While I don't fully agree with the criticism, I'll say this: if the rest of the season until the episode 10 finale, whatever is going to be some razzle dazzle thing. If episodes 5 through 9 are all like, hey, this is about me and my situation, and the solution to a low key mission runs through me and my ability to contribute. Yes, that will get a bit boring if that's all they do for the next 5 or 6 episodes. You want to mix it up, and next week is more character centric than the week after that. Plague comes to the Academy, or whatever, robots attack, or whatever. We're going on a big camping trip, like whatever it is. You want to keep things mixed up. I think that that's something that, in more recent years, let's say Strange New Worlds moving forward, I'm including Lower Decks in that as well. I think Kurtzman era Star Trek Inc. has done a good job saying, let's not do anything that is too much like the most recent episode, or we don't want to end up in any kind of pattern, but we do have this thing called Star Trek that is every option theoretically out there.
Well, everybody's going to be talking about next week's episode, and no spoilers, Matt. You're going to want to watch it as soon as possible.
Ooh. I'll keep that in mind. Any other feedback from your end, Pete?
No.
Well, then, let us go to Fred from the Netherlands for his latest thoughts about this episode.
Hello, Matt and Pete, and all listeners to Phantastic Geek. This is Fred from the Netherlands with a little feedback for Star Trek Starfleet Academy Season 1, Episode 4. Coming back to last week's podcast first, as I told you, I used the Star Trek font, the Star Trek typeface that they use here in the opening credits as a font for the chapter titles in my PhD thesis, and on the cover for the title of the thesis. During the defense, I got compliments from one of the opponents about the typefacing, and you, Pete, asked whether she knew it was a Star Trek font. Well, she did. She was a fan herself, but nobody in the audience knew what we were talking about. In the opening of her address, she said, "I want to compliment you on typefacing," and that was just it. Talking about a debate club, well, that surely was a debate club, that defense. To be honest, I got a little bored about the, 3/4 of this episode. Debate clubs are not the most inspiring stuff. But surprisingly, at the end, it really got me. I choked up due to the discussion between Caleb and Jaden at the end. I found Jaden's anxiety for talking publicly a little bit over the top, by the way. Furthermore, a lot of stunning visuals. Okay, that will be all for this week. Greetings, all the best, Fred from the Netherlands.
What an interesting summation there from Fred. Yes, I would agree. There's a general limit to the debate, the courtroom style episode, but for Fred, the character moments really rising to the top.
Yeah, and it's got to service the characters. That drumhead episode is so iconic because it so firmly establishes Picard as a different type of captain than had come before, right? That he's more based in logic, in finding a hole through the reasoning, and to win the day like that. So to have the Klingon problem that is uniquely Klingon, that they can't take a handout, and that the Klingon who is going to debate, he's terrified of speaking in public, which we've never seen weakness from Klingons before, but he's the one who's able to figure out here's how we're going to offer up the homeworld to the Klingons, and it's a success.
Well, Pete, in this episode, we are either the Klingons or the Federation, and I just checked. Turns out Phantastic Geek is squarely on the Federation side because you know what? If people want to help support this podcast, you don't need to give us an entire geologically accurate planet. You can go to patreon.com/fantasticgeek and lend some support. It could even be a little bit of support there. Every bit certainly helps.
Everybody who contributes gets access to exclusive content. There are all sorts of levels to choose from, but it takes just $1 a month to get you in that door. Can't contribute right now, you can still help us out. You can go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating to this podcast or any of our 40 plus podcast feeds.
And Pete, let's keep the pop culture conversation going, whether it's Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel, DC, and beyond. How can people be in touch with you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Threads. You can find me on Blue Sky at Peter, Pieterjaar, Ketelar, 12,600 followers. Can't be wrong.
And while I'm personally on Twitter as Looking Back Lost, do me touch the podcast, comment on fantasticgeek.com. Check us out on Twitter, Threads, Gmail, Blue Sky, Instagram. But wait, Pete, there's even more.
Facebook.com/Phantastic Geek with the PH, all one word, like it today.
And certainly looking forward to next weekend where it's going to be another 1-2 punch. First, we are going to be podcasting the second half, nay, the final half of Wonder Man on our Pop Culture Podcast feed, also the Marvel Movie Podcast feed, and of course, back next Star Trek Sunday for the latest episode of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. With that, Pete, I'll say adios to all listeners and give you the final word.
Class dismissed.